This is Ari Kaplan speaking with Chris La Cour, the founder and executive director of Carmel Valley E-Discovery Retreat, newly coined the CVEDR for 2012. It's a conference for e-discovery professionals at all levels in various disciplines. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Ari. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure, yeah, let's go into that. My background as it relates to the electronic discovery industry is one, truthfully speaking, of very little experience. I came into the industry purely by accident in 2006. That's when I had ambitions on practicing law, and I was going through the law school admissions process. And quickly I realized that going through the admissions process, I found that really the idea of practicing law seemed rather not too interesting. So I decided to stay in the industry, which I greatly enjoyed. And at that time, I was working for a legal process outsourcing provider, and that company was LawScribe under the guidance of Kunur Chopra and Mark Ross. From there, I found myself moving onshore, right, and working for Hudson Legal under Mark Zamsky and Andy. And one of the things that I enjoyed greatly was always the network and the industry and learning more about this wonderful electronic discovery industry, but wanted to see if there was an opportunity or a way for me to interject my kind of way of going about doing business. And that's kind of my background as it relates to the industry as a whole. I am not a practicing attorney. I am not a consultant. Just more, I think I find myself as a very good networker, per se. That would be the correct term.
You know, given the buzz about the conference and the success that we're hearing, I would say that you're more than that, and I'm excited to be having this conversation. So, you know, tell me a little bit about the genesis for creating the CVEDR.
Yeah, sure. It all started, I'd say about a year and a half ago. I went on vacation to Carmel. I've been to Carmel a number of times. I'm born and raised in Southern California. And Carmel has always been a beautiful destination that my family's traveled to, and I've taken my family there. And we just always had a great time. And while I was just sitting on the beach, I just thought of a few ideas of maybe potentially having an opportunity to establish some sort of small, right, group of folks in the industry together to come out to Carmel. And let me say that I was really looking at small being maybe 20, 50 people, 25, 50 people, no more than that. And I wrote down a couple of notes while I was in Carmel visiting, and then I went back home, and I really started to really harp in on this idea and see if there would be a way for me to kind of, in my opinion, put something out on the West Coast that people could come to accept and really learn from. And that's really how the event got created. The first person I contacted was Brownie Marian from DLA Piper. I had no prior relationship with Brownie. I'm in Orange County. He's in San Diego. It seemed to make sense. And, you know, he's a figure in the space that's widely respected. He does a number of events. And I wanted to run this idea by him, which I did. And he was so gracious enough to allow me to come to his office, explain kind of the preliminary vision I had for the retreat. And, he welcomed the idea and really encouraged me to kind of pursue it more. And sure enough, it grew from that point moving forward.
So let's talk about this for a second. So first of all, let me just say that I also have had experience working with Brownie, who I think is a tremendously generous and, you know, visionary member of our community. And I think it's very cool that he was associated with and, you know, somewhat of a catalyst to a lot of this occurring. And so tell me a little bit about the size that it ended up growing to and a little bit about the logistics.
Well, you know, it's so interesting because I was playing with names, and it was just so difficult for me to get started because I'm more of a visual person, and I was having a hard time doing this because I had nothing to work off of. And it's kind of an interesting, funny story. How this all really started is I contacted Browning. I had met with Browning in San Diego at his office, and we had lunch together. And then what he didn't know, which I'd never shared with Browning, is that at the same time I had contacted George. And I had asked George, if he would be interested in coming on board. Now, keep in mind, I had no prior relationships, and, it was kind of interesting because, in so many ways, they had no idea who I was. I'm talking to some very big figures in our industry, and, I was very nervous about it, but I felt very, I'm a very passionate person, and I felt like I had something to give back to the industry that I care so much about, and I wanted to portray that in such a way that would be acceptable in their minds for them to come on board. But cut a long story short, I contacted George, and interestingly enough...
And just for purposes of the people watching, it's George Socha.
Yes, George Socha.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Yes. And interestingly enough, I did not know at the time that George and Browning had communications or were talking or friends, so on and so forth. I had no idea. And it was kind of funny to find out that, so on. Chris called you too, huh? And it kind of word got around that I was trying to do something in Carmel and on the West Coast, and they graciously agreed to be involved and see what we could do to work with one another to put this event on. Now, keep in mind though that it wasn't instantaneously, yes, we're going to come on board. I mean, they did their due diligence, and I had extensive conversations with George prior to even putting out the website in August in 2010. And let's just be honest here. George even mentioned to me, there's a number of events, Chris. And one of the things you got to really think about is, what's going to separate your event from the others. And, he does a lot of events, and Browning speaks at a lot of events. And what are we going to do to help you achieve what you want to achieve? And it really got me to thinking about what some of our differentiators are, what we wanted to do, so on and so forth. So that's kind of how we got started. And then from there, obviously, with those two names, it became easier, right, to, call on people who I felt had a good name, had a name in the space, a recognizable name, and I could, ask if they would be, interested in speaking at Carmel at the retreat, and it just kind of, took off from there. But during the time that I was doing all this and asking speakers if I could put their name on the website, if they would be willing to speak, a lot of them, it was kind of funny because in talking with George, I'm sure they got a number of phone calls saying, what are you doing? Do you know who this guy is? And do you know what, So it's just interesting to see how it all unfolded, but it worked out in our favor, worked out in my favor.
This is so interesting to me because I talk about this principle in my book called intersections, this idea of, you contacting Browning and then you contacting George, and that contact intersecting and creating further credibility for your ultimate goal, and then them probably speaking to other people simultaneously, and that creating further intersections, further building the foundation for this process. So I think it's pretty interesting. So what were your goals? So you were going to start a conference. There are plenty of conferences, but you said, look, I'm going to have another conference. So you talked about, well, I had to consider my differentiator factors. And so what are those, and what were your goals for the event?
Truthfully speaking, some of our differentiators, and I think it's kind of clear from just what we're doing right now, it's the location. I've got so much feedback from everyone who attended this most recent event that we had about a month ago now. But the location, just like real estate, the location, I think, really helped us. But truthfully speaking, it was very difficult for me, even though we had a great location, and Carmel is very recognized as one of those, amazing locations, destinations that people travel to, and so on and so forth. And it's quite popular for, Hollywood movie stars. Clint Eastwood was the former mayor there. So it's got a name behind it. But what I will say is, in promoting the event, I had the idea that people knew about Carmel. But truthfully speaking, I guess what I found out is that not too many people are familiar with Carmel. Another thing that I would make a point about across is Carmel is one of those places that if you visit, it's like like if you're in a movie, it's like a storybook. It's got such great character to Carmel. It's so beautiful, and it's just it's just like a place where you can go and just kind of relax and unwind. And that's really the kind of direction I wanted to take the retreat, and that's the way that we take the retreat, is I wanted people to come to this event and really have more casual, relaxed conversations with one another to build on potential relationships, right? Existing ones and old ones, excuse me, in such a way that it wouldn't come across as something that was being forced. There would be an opportunity for everyone to network on-site and off-site. And that's kind of the vision that I had, because I think in today's event marketplace, there are so many wonderful events, but we have them in the same destinations. Now, keep in mind, those destinations are like New York, for example, or Washington, D.C., or Los Angeles, are major hubs for a lot of law firms. A lot of vendor locations are headquartered there. So I understand that. But I wanted to interject a change where I thought that it would work for Carmel to come into play and people to experience Carmel and attend a great event, right, conference, and go to the panel sessions and network and so on and so forth, but also take it off-site and go to Carmel by the Sea, Ocean Avenue, right? Go to Pebble Beach, 17-mile drive, and do the most beautiful drive in the world, really, and really experience things outside of just where you're at in your setting, right? You really get a captivated audience, and that's really another thing that I like about Carmel. And, they can't, for example, if you're in Los Angeles, right, and you got the law firm right down the street, well, they can come and go, and that's a great selling point. But I think what's so interesting is in Carmel, you have their attention, you have the opportunity to network and really build on something for a few days, which I think is very valuable.
So where does the CVEDR now fit into the legal event universe?
That's a very good question. We are definitely a boutique conference. And as far as what I would say where we fit into the grand scheme of things, there's a number of great events. You've got Masters Conference, you've got Georgetown. We all know about Legal Tech in New York and Legal Tech in LA. And you've got others that are out there. I think, and
of course, ILTA.
Yes, ILTA. Don't let me forget about ILTA, which is went on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things I would say is we are a boutique, so we are not a large group. It will never be this large conference setting of over 500 plus attendees. We'll never be that size. Never. More as we are a boutique to where we like to have, I would say in between about maybe 200, 250 plus attendees, and really have an opportunity to network in a beautiful destination location. And that's where I think we fit. I wouldn't go as far as to say is, that truthfully speaking, I have no ambition to go out east and do an event. It's not my place. And really, I feel comfortable with the West because that's where I've grown up. In my business development roles that I've had with various document review providers and so on and so forth, I feel comfortable here, right? That's where I've been networking. That's where I've been building relationships for the last 4 or 5 years now. So, where we fit, it's a very good question. I think that answer is still waiting to be unfolded. I think there's still a lot of things that I need to learn and a lot of things that I am learning. But we're definitely boutique. I would say that we align ourselves probably very well with like a Masters out in the East, a Masters conference. I would say that's probably our closest, in terms of what we're doing, probably a like for like, something like that on the East Coast, if I could compare a comparison. Right.
No, that's great. It's interesting to hear because there are a lot of great events. We didn't mention Tech Show, another great event. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah. And it's interesting to figure out. So when when someone would be thinking of creating a conference and in fact, reinventing the whole model of what it is to have a legal conference, it sounds to me like what you've done is you've said, look, you have to have great content. You have to have great speakers. You have to have great support, which is which seems like what your event had, but also I want to add layers of what people are looking for with respect to connecting with people that they don't get to normally see, and also keeping them in a place where they would be more likely to make those connections.
Absolutely. And let me say, that I was very nervous about having the retreat in Carmel. I thought about it a lot because even though I knew it was a great destination and I wanted to expose the location for its beauty and so on and so forth, Carmel is very unique in that it doesn't have any major airports, right? Like Los Angeles or where I'm at in Orange County. So I was a little bit nervous in putting the retreat there, but I thought that with Carmel Valley Ranch and the new renovation that Carmel Valley Ranch underwent, it just seemed to make sense. Silicon Valley, you've got San Francisco, you've got Palo Alto, you've got so many wonderful, folks out that way who are in electronic discovery. And we've got such major corporations there. I mean, we've got Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, so on and so forth, Yahoo.
Well, so tell me a little bit about the challenges that you were facing. You said that the location, it's funny because the location in one sense was the key to everything. You just wanted to have a conference in Carmel. It inspired you. And then the location in some way became the Achilles heel. You weren't sure. Not as many people as you thought knew about Carmel. So tell us a little bit about some of the other challenges and how you were able to overcome them.
Some of the other challenges, was talking about my event and really getting vendors to understand what I was trying to accomplish in 2011. Very difficult. Very difficult. I would get on the phone and I would mention, Carmel Valley E-Discovery Retreat. We're going to be in Carmel. Look, that can only go so far, right? These are educated, people that we're dealing with here. So Carmel, yeah, that's a great location, great destination. But, one of the things that, again, we have names in the industry that people obviously recognize, but a lot of those names speak at a lot of other events. And one of the things that I wanted to have was some of those names, align with me so that people feel comfortable in doing business with me, but also interject some new speakers, right? Some new people to the industry that could have a say and give their input as it relates to the electronic discovery industry and so on and so forth. And I think finding that medium was very difficult. There was a number of challenges. I mean, I could sit here and just go into hours of challenges, but more importantly, just, waking up every day and just, staying positive and staying motivated to really stay on course, right? And really pushing the envelope to say, you know what, I believe in what I'm doing. This can work. That at times became very difficult because I worked very, very hard and I became very frustrated with myself if, for example, I would have a conference call with a vendor and maybe I didn't say things in context that they would understand, or maybe I'm not getting traction as I would like to. And it became very difficult. But I think that when I started figuring out what our differentiators were and what I was really trying to achieve, I think I started seeing that come across my conversations a lot more, and it became a lot more easier for vendors to say, okay, I can see now where you're coming from. It took about 2 or 3 or even 4 or even 5 conversations. But I think after having more of them and understanding more about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve, they understood. And it was a good thing because, I come from the sales side. And, one of the things that I like is, we know why these vendors sponsor events. Well, they go there to, obviously, for branding and for networking. But let's be honest here, the main goal that that vendors, in my opinion, have and why they sponsor events is because, they obviously want business. And obviously you can't have a business if you don't have leads, if you're not closing business. Obviously it all revolves around revenue, so on and so forth, and ROI. So one of the things that I had to think about is ways to show, potential vendors what their ROI would be and how we could work with one another to achieve those goals.
So what's your plan for 2012?
My plan is, here's the plan. We're going to have the event again, and we're going to go back to Carmel Valley Ranch, and we're we're looking at having the retreat tentative dates, July the 22nd through the 24th. And that is the plan right now. It's only been about, 3-4 weeks since we just had our most recent retreat. And right now, that's all I could say. I mean, one of the things that I've got to work on is revising our website and revising our marketing material and doing all these things and starting all over again. But at least what I feel comfortable with is I've got some framework, right, to work with now, and I understand, what to expect now for 2012 because, I had no experience in putting on a conference. None. As a matter of fact, when we came on board live August of 2010 all the way through July, obviously, when we had the retreat. And I had to rely on so many people for help. And I want everyone to understand that the success of this event and what I've learned over this last year has been from a lot of people that are strategic alliance partners of mine, a lot of speakers, so on and so forth. This is not some people say, you've done so great. I've done well. I think I've done a good job, what I would say, in putting on an event that the community, and what I feel, recognizes as something substantial, something that I think people will enjoy and would want to attend for many years to come. But it certainly has not just been myself. So I want to make that very clear. It's been a team effort on all fronts. I've hired people like Sasha Heffler, who was very instrumental in helping me, just really have a clear, precise plan of action of what we're doing, just the day-to-day activities, all the planning for on-site, what to expect. I've got other folks like Neil Signor of Executive Council Institute, who is very instrumental and just learning so much from Neil and his events. And then, of course, George and Browning and all these other speakers who really have done these, type of events and really have the experience. Because, again, I had no experience whatsoever. I came in and I just said I wanted to do something. I'm just a very driven person. And, I personally, whatever I put my mind to, I pretty much can succeed at. So, again, it's just a community effort, and I'm just really happy to have the opportunity to let people know that we are a very serious player in this business, and we're going to continue to be a very serious player, and there's going to be opportunity for us to grow. That's just my 2 cents on the subject. But
it sounds like the key to this reinvention of the legal conference is really one of collaborating with a talented pool of members and also defining a very clear vision driven by passionate leadership.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's exactly right. And, I'm just excited, Ari, if more than anything. I'm just really excited. I'm glad we made it through this first year. There's a lot of people out there that, I went through so many challenges. No one knew who I was. And that was one of the most frustrating things is, I meant very well for the industry and I meant good. And it was just difficult to really get everyone's attention because, who's Chris La Cour? And I'm not a practicing attorney. I don't have a big company name. I don't have a software, I don't have a software tool. I don't have I haven't done any large cases, again, so on and so forth. There's just so many odds against me. But, one thing I will say and what I think I've been successful at throughout my whole career is connecting with people and having the ability to really make something out of nothing. And I think I've done that time and time again. So that was nothing new to me. But I think on this, really this national level and really, making something very special for everyone to attend. And I'm just excited because now, I've got so many emails from everyone who attended the retreat or didn't attend the retreat and want to attend next year, or they heard good things about it. So I'm just really excited about the new opportunities that are to come our way and, how I can build this and grow this into an event that's widely, respected on a national and even a global scale. But, just so that everyone can understand that, Chris La Cour is a household name and he is somebody who should be respected and who does put on really good events and really does care about this industry, very much so. So I'm just glad to have that opportunity to do that, and I can't be more thankful enough than, again, to thank everyone who decided to get involved with this event, really.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. This is Ari Kaplan speaking with Chris La Cour, the founder and executive director of Carmel Valley E-Discovery Retreat, newly coined the CVEDR for 2012, a conference for e-discovery professionals at all levels in various disciplines. Chris, thanks so much.
Thanks, Ari.